The cabin walls groaned softly against the restless wind outside, but inside the air was heavy with silence, so thick that even the crackle of the old stove seemed reluctant to interrupt it. The cowboy sat in his chair, broad shoulders hunched slightly forward, his weathered face half shadowed by the brim of his hat, eyes fixed on the woman before him. She knelt on the wooden floor, proud yet desperate, her dark eyes burning with something fiercer than fear. The Apache woman's skin glistened in the soft light, her breath quick and shallow, her body draped in fringed leather that spoke of a heritage older than the timber cabin itself. Her voice trembled not with weakness but with intensity, a fire drawn from centuries of survival and dignity. "Let me stay here," she said, her words a blade cutting through the silence, "and I will give you what no white woman can." For a moment, the cowboy's hand hovered near the revolver at his belt, not in threat but in instinct, because every fiber of him told him this moment was dangerous, that the path ahead was not one a man could walk without losing something of himself. Yet he could not tear his eyes away from her. He had seen women before, wives of settlers, girls in saloons, but never one who carried herself like this, as though the earth itself had chosen her to bear its strength. Her body bore the grace of a warrior, the curves of a woman, and the raw will of someone who had fought too long to ever bow again. He shifted uneasily, his rough fingers curling against his thigh. "You don't belong here," he muttered, voice low, as if trying to convince himself as much as her. But she leaned forward, the flicker of the stove painting bronze over her skin, her bracelets clinking softly like whispers of ancient spirits. "I belong where I choose," she replied, her tone heavy with defiance, but also something softer, something he couldn't name, a plea buried deep beneath layers of strength. Her eyes searched his face, not with the timid hope of someone begging for mercy, but with the unflinching gaze of a woman who knew her worth. She reminded him of the wild horses that roamed the plains, untamed, proud, dangerous in their freedom, and for the first time in years, he felt the ground shift under his boots in a way no bullet or blade had managed to do. The cowboy swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the storm raging inside him. The world he came from told him she was the enemy, told him she was less, told him she was a fleeting shadow on land that was never hers to claim. But his heart, stubborn as it was, betrayed him. It told him she was more alive than any woman he had ever known, more real, more untouchable. And yet here she was, kneeling before him, not as a captive, but as someone offering him a choice that could alter the course of both their lives. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, a land carved by blood and sweat, but in that room, the universe shrank to the space between them. He studied the tension in her jaw, the rise and fall of her chest, the raw determination etched into every line of her face. He wondered what she truly meant by her promise. What was it she believed no white woman could give? Was it passion, loyalty, a bond forged not in convenience or conquest, but in survival and spirit? The cowboy's heart pounded like hooves across dry earth. He had always been a man of solitude, carrying his burdens alone, trusting no one but the steel at his side. Yet this woman threatened to unravel him without lifting a hand, without drawing a weapon, without even standing tall. Her presence alone was a challenge to everything he thought he knew. And though he could have ordered her out, though he could have ended this conversation with one cold dismissal, he didn't. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, and said the words that surprised him more than any outlaw's ambush ever could. "Tell me what you mean." Her lips parted, and for a long moment she seemed to wrestle with the weight of the truth pressing against her tongue, her gaze fixed on his with unwavering intensity. Then slowly she began to speak, her words carrying the rhythm of the wind across the mesas, ancient and raw. She told him of her people, of the land that birthed them and the spirits that guided them, of the wars fought not only with rifles, but with hunger and betrayal. She told him that the bond between man and woman was not just flesh or comfort or the shallow union of survival, but a fire that burned deep enough to bind souls together beyond death. "A white woman," she said, voice steady now, "can give you her hand, her house, her children, but I will give you myself, my spirit, my strength, my world. When I stay, I do not just warm your bed, I guard your life. When I stand beside you, I do not bend. I fight, I endure. I become your shadow in the light." And your fire in the dark. Her voice cracked slightly, but her eyes did not waver. That is what no white woman can give you. That is what I offer, if you let me stay. The cowboy sat frozen, her words cutting deeper than any knife, striking places inside him he had long thought dead. He had always seen himself as a lone wolf, hardened by the trail, unshaken by loss. But now he realized the loneliness he carried was not strength, it was emptiness. He remembered the nights he had stared at the endless stars, whiskey in hand, wondering what it all meant, wondering if the dust and blood was all his life would ever be. And now here was this woman, fierce and unbroken, offering him not just herself but something greater, something he didn't even know he needed. His hand trembled slightly as he rubbed his beard, searching for words, but his tongue failed him. He could only stare at her, and in that silence he knew she saw the war within him. She shifted closer, her body lean and strong, every movement deliberate, every breath a reminder that she was not some fragile figure to be pitied, but a force to be reckoned with. "You fear what people will say," she whispered, almost accusing. "But men's words are ashes in the wind. What matters is the fire we carry, and whether we let it burn or let it die." The cowboy's heart thundered, his pulse echoing in his ears. He had faced gunmen, bandits, and death more times than he could count, but never had he felt so cornered, so stripped bare, so utterly defenseless. And yet, strangely, it did not terrify him. It set him free. For the first time, he saw a future not paved in dust and loneliness, but carved from courage and passion. A future in which this woman, this warrior, stood beside him, fierce and unyielding. Slowly, almost unwillingly, he rose from his chair. The wooden floor creaked under his boots, the air charged with something beyond words. He stepped toward her, each stride heavy with hesitation, yet pulled by an invisible force. She tilted her head back to meet his gaze, her breath shallow, her eyes unflinching. For a heartbeat the world held still. No sound but the whisper of fire in the stove. Then his rough hand lifted, hovering above her cheek before finally, gently, brushing against her skin. It was not ownership, not conquest, but recognition, an acceptance of what stood before him. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. And for the first time since he had taken to the trail, he felt the weight of his solitude lift. Neither spoke, for words would have only broken the spell that bound them. In that silence promises were forged, not in ink or law, but in blood and spirit. The cowboy knew that the path ahead would not be easy, that the world beyond these walls would judge, condemn, and perhaps even try to tear them apart. But he also knew that he would rather face the bullets of 100 enemies than turn away from the fire that burned so fiercely before him. And as he held her there in the quiet glow of the stove, he realized something he had never dared to believe. He was no longer alone.